Welcome back. Today I'm working on my 2023 Yamaha YZ250FX. Bike has 54 hours on it, and recently it started leaking oil from the valve cover gasket in this area around these camshaft cutouts. I've washed the bike so you can't see it as well, but I'll put a photo on the screen that shows it before I washed it. I've had a few of these Yamahas over the years, and they're trouble-free for the most part. I've never had an oil leak like this, so I'm gonna get the valve cover off and see if I can figure out what's going on. And by the way, the valve cover has never been off of this bike. I know the manual does call for some Yamaha bond in these corners to prevent leaks, so I'll see if it's got some Yamaha bond in there and just try to figure out what's going on. I've also got a new valve cover gasket. I removed the air filter and installed the wash plug because I'm going to take the bike outside, clean it up really well before I remove the valve cover. I spent some time getting all this cleaned up. Now I'm going to remove this retainer bracket and the spark plug, as well as this vent hose and the two screws that hold on the valve cover. Now, I don't see anything too obvious going on here, but I know when I removed the valve cover from my other Yamahas, they've had more sealant than this, or more Yamaha bond in these areas. You can see just a little bit of sealant right there and right there. But I think maybe it just didn't get enough sealant. Looks like more of the sealant was left on the cylinder head mating surfaces. But I don't see any Yamaha bond in those camshaft cutout areas. But I think when I reinstall the new gasket, I just need to put some Yamaha bond in these areas. While I've got the valve cover off, it makes sense to go ahead and check my valve clearances. So I'm going to remove these two plugs so I can rotate the engine to top dead center on the compression stroke, line up my marks here and the marks on the camshaft. There's my top dead center mark, and there are dots on the camshaft that line up with the top of the cylinder head, right there, and right there. So I've got the crankshaft on top dead center. I've aligned the marks on my camshaft to ensure that I'm at top dead center on the compression stroke, and I further verified that by looking at the camshafts and the lobes are facing upward. This is not going to be a complete how-to video. I did do a how-to video on how to check valve clearances on these bikes, and I'll put a link to that video in the description. All right, these are the valve clearances I'm checking for. On the intake valves, 0.12 to 0.19 millimeter, and on the exhaust, 0.17 to 0.24 millimeter. I'll start with the intake valves on this side. I'm looking for 0.12 to 0.19 millimeters, so I'll start with a 0.15. That does not fit on that side, and it does not fit on that side either. So I'll go down to my next feeler gauge is 0.13. .13 goes in pretty easy over here, so that's somewhere between 0.13 and 0.15. So I'll call that 0.14. And then same thing over here. This goes in pretty easily, so I'll call that 0.14. So those intake valves are in spec. The exhaust, I'm looking for 0.17 to 0.24. So I'll start out with 0.18. .18 fits. .18 goes in on both sides. Let me go up to 0.20 is my next feeler gauge. 0.20 fits there. .20 goes in pretty snug over there. My next one is .23, and .23 goes in with a very snug fit on that side. .23 does not go in over here, so I've got .23 and probably about .21, .22 over here. So these exhaust valves are both in spec as well, so those are good for now. So I'm gonna go ahead and get the gasket swapped over and get the valve cover reinstalled. I don't really think anything's wrong with this gasket. I think there just wasn't enough sealant in these areas, but I've got a new gasket, so I'm gonna go ahead and use it. So I've cleaned up all the mating surfaces, and I've got a really thin coat of Yamaha bond on these areas around here. And then I've got a little dab of Yamaha bond in the corners of the gasket. I'm gonna put the gasket on the cylinder head first and then put the valve cover on top of that. I think it's gonna be easier that way. All right, it took a few minutes to get the gasket lined up perfectly with the valve cover all the way around, but I've got it now. So now I can just put everything back together. I removed the spark plug earlier when I was checking the valve clearances. It still looked pretty good, but it had 54 hours on it, so I'm going to go ahead and install a new spark plug. Anytime you remove the fuel tank from one of these bikes, it's a good idea to reach up under here and grab that fuel line and make sure it's not pinched between the tank and the frame or between the tank and the engine. That'll save you some frustration. All right, that should resolve my oil leak, and now I know my valves are still in spec. If you enjoyed this video, please click the like button. That really helps me out. Thanks for watching.